Welcome everyone. In this video, we are going to learn how to create a 5-star rating system with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. For the most part, JavaScript will be running the show here, as we are creating an object for each star rating system we create on the page. By the end of this video, we will have something that looks like this. So we can create as many star rating systems on the page as need be, and each one is independent of the rest. Another thing to note is we can set up the star rating system to begin at a certain point. So this first one here starts out at 50%, and the second one here is at 20%. Next thing is the onHover. So if we hover over these star rating systems, the stars fill up to the max star that we're currently hovering on. So if I click on a star, it'll tell me how many stars I've rated. I click OK, and then the star rating system highlights to those stars. Alright, let's dive into the code. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new index file. Next, we need a star outline image. So what we need for this image is a star with a background of white. It has to be a white background with a black outline, and inside the star has to be transparent. Basically how this star rating system works is you have one big rectangle and you fill that up. It's just like a progress bar. And then in front of that you have the stars, so you get this illusion of a 5-star rating system. So I'm going to grab this star outline here. So you see the background is white behind the star, but inside the star is transparent. So we are going to begin with our HTML. The first script we are going to include is jQuery. So who doesn't love jQuery? Making life easier. So let's begin by defining our containing div. Like I said, JavaScript is going to be doing most of the work here, so all we need is a container div. JavaScript object will be handling the writing out of the star, the image, the hover, and the onClicks to this div. So we're going to create one, and we're going to call it star rating. Just like that. That is all we need. Now we can define our star rating object. So what we have here is our skeleton. This is the skeleton object. We have our star rating defined here. This is the constructor function where everything will be passed into when we create the object, and then we return it. So this will all happen on page load, like this. So we're going to do a new star rating system on page load. It looks something like this. And we will pass in some parameters as an object. So when the page loads, this is going to run. It's going to create our new star rating object. Now we got to pass in some parameters in order to set this all up. So these parameters, this parameter object here, is going to get passed in as the args to our constructor function. So there's a few things we want to pass along here. We need to tell our star rating system which DOM element is going to be the container. So our container ID is just star rating, because we've set our div up down here with an ID of star rating. This is telling JavaScript this object needs to write stuff out to this div right here. Next, we're going to define our star width. We're going to set this to 100, star height to 100. The rating percent is going to be a string, and this is going to tell the star rating system how far the progress should be when the page loads. So like you saw in the example, the first one loaded at 50%, and then we're going to set true false to can rate. This is going to determine if the user is able to rate the star system or not. So maybe if you have a user that is not logged in, they're not able to rate the system. So then they would only be able to see the star rating system. They wouldn't be able to hover over it or click on it. Last but not least, we're going to pass an onRate, which is going to be a function. This is the alert that we saw earlier, where it's once you click on the star rating system, it'll tell you how many stars you have just rated. All right, so we have our on-page load object. So we'll hop back up here to our star rating object. First thing we're going to do is do a self equals this. Next, we're going to set the container. Set this to the container DOM element of the args that we're passing in. So the args contain the container ID. Args container ID. As long as we're doing the self dot, we can reference that from any function we create within our star rating object. So that's why we're setting a bunch of global variables here for our object. So we basically here just defined everything that we've passed in from the args object. And we saved it to our new star rating object. Now we're going to create a few other things. Save them here globally. Oh, that is not supposed to be star, it's supposed to be using self here. First thing we're going to do is the container width. This would equal the stars width times the number of stars we have, which we're doing a 5-star rating system. Stars width times 5 will give us that width of our current rectangle. Next, we're going to specify a self.newRating of 0. The new rating is going to hold the rating that the user clicks on. So we can start it at 0 because it doesn't really matter on page load because the user's already going to see the average votes. So then when they click on a star, it'll update new rating to 4, 2, 5, whatever they click on. And last but not least, we're going to save the can rate so we know if the user can rate the star system or if they can just view it. Now we can get into the fun stuff, the actual drawing of the star rating system out to the end user. So what this draw function is going to do is it's going to draw our stars out. So we're going to create a new function here. So we're going to give ourselves access to our object. First thing we're going to create is the pointer style. So what this is going to do is it's going to tell us if the user can rate. We're going to give them the little hand icon over when they hover over star. If not, they're going to get the default arrow, which means they cannot rate. So they should log in. Next, we're going to set up our the HTML for our image, which is each star. Now we're going to start writing our HTML. First thing we need is to get a container element going. So this is going to be the container around everything inside of our rectangle. All right, so we've created our container div that's going to contain the whole star rating system. What we did here is we set the style with a width of the container width, which we calculated to be star width times 5. We set the height to be the height of the star. We have a position relative on this, and the pointer style, which we defined right up here. Now, before we go into our for each loop, we need to add the star bar progress. The for each loop is going to write each star out, and then behind that is going to be our progress bar, which is going to be just one big rectangle with a progress of %. And that is going to look like this. So our star bar, first thing we're going to do is give it a class of star bar, and we're going to add on the container ID. The reason we're adding on the container ID is to make this unique to each star rating system we write to the page. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set the width to the rating %. So we defined it to be 50% on page load when we passed it into our args. So that's going to be spit out right here. The last thing we have to do is actually write out all the stars. And to do that, we're going to write a for loop over 5 times, draw out each star. All right, so this is our for loop. We're going over it 5 times, and each time we're going to be creating a star. Each of the 5 stars in our star rating system. First thing we're going to do in each of for this for loop, for each iteration, is set our style. We're going to set this position absolute, and then we're going to do a margin left of the star times the current star number. So the reason we're doing this is position absolute is going to put every star right over to the left. So the first one is going to be at the left, the second one is going to be the left, third, fourth, and fifth. The margin left here is just going to bump each star over the right amount of pixels. Margin left is the star width times I. So the first time it comes through here, the star width is 100 times 0, 0. Second time it comes through here, it's going to be star width 100 times 1. So the first iteration was 0. Now we have the second star at 100 pixels over. And 200, 300, 400, 500. And that's how we position them correctly. Next we have our star. Class is our star class, which we did not define, plus self.container ID. So our star class comes in right here. Then we're going to add a data attribute on, telling us which star we're currently looking at. And our style is our current style, which we just described up here. And our star image is our HTML image we defined up here. The only thing left to do at the end of this function is to actually write this out to the DOM. So we're going to reference our container, which is that div with the ID of star rating. And we're going to specify the HTML to be our HTML variable right here. So let's hop over to the browser and see what we got going so far. Well, that's less than ideal. What is going on here? Oh, we got a plus equals issue. Go figure. Plus equals. Oh, yep. Well, let's see. We're adding onto HTML, so we have to have plus equals every time. Plus equals, plus equals, plus... Oh, we can't define it again. We need to contain this, I believe. Star width. All right, that's set to 100 times I. All right, let's try this again. Still not looking good. Margin left is NaN. That is what I thought. Margin left. Why is it NaN though? Isn't star width set? Star width. Oh, well, you see, width is spelled W-I-D-T-H. That's got to fix it. Yep, exactly. Spelling errors 90% of the time. So our star system is loaded at 50%, like we can see. Hovers don't work, clicks don't work. That's because we haven't set that stuff up yet. But we're making progress. The last thing we have to do is make this star rating system interactive. we're going to turn can rate to true. This is saying, yes, you can rate this star system. And then our onRate function here is going to contain whatever happens when we click on a star. In the real world, you're going to want to make some calls to the server here, update the server, say, hey, this user has rated this blog post this many stars. For the case of this video, we're just going to console log it and alert it. So we're going to go back to the constructor here. We just need to store rate function. So we're going to do that, but we're only going to do that if the user can rate. So if the user can rate, first we're going to check if a function has been passed in to our onRate. If it hasn't, then nothing's going to happen on rate. The star will just highlight. So if it does not equal undefined, we're going to save it to the object. So what this did is basically now we can call self.onRate at any point in our object at any time, and that function will kick off. Before we do the onClick, we're going to do the mouse over. This is whenever the user hovers over the star, what happens? Well, the stars highlight up to whatever star you're highlighted on. Alright, so this is our mouse over. First thing we do on mouse over of any star is we calculate the percent width. Percent width is going to be 20 times how many of our stars have been clicked on. And so then we set the CSS for the star bar to width of whatever we calculated, and we tack on the percent sign. Alright, so the mouse is a little simpler. Whenever we mouse out of any of the stars, we're going to default the progress bar back to the rating percent that was defined when it was created. Last, but definitely not least, we can get to our onClick function. Alright, so we have our click function all set up. What are we doing here? We're doing an onClick for any star in the star rating system. The first thing we're going to do when the user clicks on a star is we're going to set the new rating to as many of our stars as they clicked on. After that, we're going to get the percent width from the stars they've clicked on. If they've clicked on 2 stars, the 2 would show up right here, so we'd have 2 times 20. Percent width is 40%. After that, we're going to set our new rating percent to 40%. And after the rating percent has been set, we can set the new width of the star bar, the star bar progress bar. So they set to 40%, the progress bar jumps to 40%. They do 100%, 5 stars, now they see 100%. And so when they mouse out, now our new rating percent is whatever you clicked on. And at the very end of our onClick function is our onRate. This is going to call our onRate function that we've passed in initially to do whatever we want to do when a user clicks on a star. Like I said before, you're going to want to pass along the user ID to the server with the amount of stars they rated for blog post, video, whatever, and save it. Only thing left to do now is to hop back to the browser and see how we're looking. Everything loads. That's a good sign. Hover. Look at that. Hover's working. This is looking promising. 3 stars, 4 stars, 1 star. Let's click on 5 stars and see what happens. Hold on, let's clear out the console log, and we get our alert. And we also get our console log, which is spit out our star rating system object, and our new, look at that, our new rating is 5, and we've rated it 5 stars. Click on it again, and now it's bumped down to 2 stars. Console logs out our object again, new rating of 2. Alright, so before we end this video, I want to show you guys how to add multiple star rating systems to a page. It's as easy as just adding another DOM element with a unique ID. So we're going to create another div, and we're going to call this star rating 2. And then in our page onload function, we're going to copy our first rating object. We're going to set this one to variable rating 2. So this is going to create a new star rating. We have to update the container ID to use our new container ID down here. Star rating 2. We can set, let's make this a little bigger so we can notice it. Rating percent, this one will start off at, let's do 40% here. We're going to say we can rate it. And then in our onRate function, we need to pass along our new variable. We don't want to pass along, this is the first variable, so that would not work. So we're going to pass on rating 2. rated rating2.newRating stars, and let's add some exclamation points here just so we can see a difference. And that's all you have to do to add a star rating to your page. Hop back to the browser, refresh. Look at that, we got a second star rating. It started out at 2 stars, 40%, and they should be totally independent of each other. The hovers are looking independent. Let's click on 5 stars here on the second one. Yep, you rated 5 stars. See all our exclamation points here, and we can see our object has logged out down here with a new rating of 5. We rate this first one to 1. We get you rated 1 stars, and there's our alert from the first onRate function. We can see console log down here, our star rating container for the first one, and our new rating of 1 star. That's all there is to it. And that is how you create a 5-star rating system using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. I hope you guys have learned something from this video, and I thank you for watching. I'll catch you later.